And good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us for another show. And happy to be doing another show with folks from the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District. And I have three guests who will give us a ton of information about what they're up to. And thanks for joining us. Dorothy Kinney-Landis. Good to see you, Dorothy. Arena Brand. And Carrie Brosnan. Good to see you, folks.
See you.
How about a little background? Dorothy, give us a little background on yourself. How long have you been with the district? And again, we have a native Vermonter here.
Yes, my name's Dorothy Kinney-Landis. I've been with the district for about 2.5 years, and my role is a natural resources planner. Originally, I grew up in southern Vermont, Guilford, right on the Mass border, and went to school at UVM, studied environmental studies. And then after graduating, I worked on a few vegetable farms and also really fell in love with landscape design and landscaping. And then I did a graduate program in ecological landscape design in Massachusetts before moving back north.
Interesting. Where were the veggie farms you worked on?
I worked at Intervale Community Farm
and
Shelburne Farms in the Market Garden, which I started doing when I was still at UVM. And then also another small farm called Common Roots.
Well, Arena, some background on yourself?
Sure, yeah.
And again, my first Arena. Great name.
Probably the only one you'll ever meet. I am from outside of Boston, from Newton, Massachusetts. Right. And I went to school at Columbia University in New York.
Wow.
I studied classics and computer science, so nothing related to what I do now. But in the pandemic, I ended up coming up to Vermont to Warren. A friend who grew up there invited me to stay, and I tried my hand at farming for the first time. And so that was actually kind of...
So good old Mad River Valley, which I don't have much history with, but sounds like a great part of Vermont.
It is, yeah. I love it there. But yeah, I got some experience working with the land and learning about food systems and regenerative agriculture and sustainability. And that kind of put me on a different trajectory. And so I've been with the district now for 1.5 years. Learning a lot.
Well, Carrie, some background?
Yeah, I grew up in New York on Long Island, and I came up to Vermont for UVM. I studied natural resources with a focus on agriculture, sustainability, and justice, and I also did a bit of geography work as well. And I was really interested in food systems and the intersections between agriculture and wildlife. And I did a internship with the North Branch Nature Center in Montpelier. And I also spent some time at Common Roots Farm as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sure I did an earlier show with your boss lady, with District Manager Lauren Weston. Wish her welcome, and I guess recovering from a knee surgery, and got into this with her. But every county is covered with a similar organization, Dorothy? Is that the case?
Yeah, so there's 14 natural resources conservation districts in Vermont.
Yeah.
Some of them are sort of based on the county scale. Some of them are watershed scales. So in Franklin County, we just serve Franklin County, and that includes, as far as watersheds go, the Missisquoi River Basin, part of Lake Champlain, and part of the Lamoille River Basin. But then for Winooski, there's the Winooski NRCD, which is covering much of the Winooski River Basin.
Interesting. For Grand Isle County has its own...
Yeah.
Franklin and Grand Isle always often get hooked together, but not in this case.
Yeah, we do a lot of work with Grand Isle NRCD, but they are an independent NRCD.
In the news, I should know, we're taping the show on Tuesday, December 9th. In the news was Lake Champlain. I guess every year there's kind of an update on the health of Lake Champlain, the Lake Champlain Basin. Are you familiar with that, or do you get into, anybody want to talk about that? I'm here. I just heard a radio news report this morning saying it sounded like some good things, but Lake Champlain obviously has plenty of issues. But anybody want to get into that a bit?
You may be talking about the State of the Lake report.
Thank you. Exactly.
Which, I think we have the 2024, 2025 version of. But yeah, absolutely. A lot of our work is clean water work in the basin, so in the Lake Champlain Basin. So we're definitely keeping an eye on those metrics, those health metrics. And a lot of the work that we do is to contribute to reducing phosphorus in the lake basin. So yeah, we're all eyes and ears about the health of the lake. And I believe, I don't have like the specific numbers off the top of my head, but we are making good progress towards what's called the TMDL reduction, that's the total maximum daily load, which is the amount of phosphorus that needs to be reduced from the lake in order to meet certain clean water standards.
Yeah.
And yeah, all of the clean water work we do is towards that goal.
That's right. Are you hopeful about Lake Champlain? I mean, it's been I've been up here for decades, but water quality in Lake Champlain, especially having been in St. Albans all my years of Franklin County. St. Albans Bay used to be the poster child for water quality problems in Vermont. Then I think Missisquoi Bay kind of took that, and Lake Carmine maybe even more so in recent years. Are you optimistic? So you think we're making progress on this front?
Absolutely.
Or not? You tell me.
I mean, I think long-term optimism, it's hard to make a statement about that, but we are definitely making progress. A lot of the work we do with farmers is some of the most impactful work and most cost-effective work that is being done to reduce phosphorus loading into the watershed. So that's a great feeling, and I think we feel really good to be doing that work.
Lake Carmine, of course, had an aeration system that didn't seem to work too well, and I guess this is happening. I guess some alum was being put into it. Did that happen? It was supposed to happen in the fall. Did that happen, in fact, Dorothy?
Yeah, the alum treatment did take place, I think, this past September. And
sounds right. Did you folks have any involvement with that, or?
It was on our radar, but not direct involvement.
Not direct.
And I think, how effective that treatment is, we'll see, but similar treatments have been done on other, similarly sized lakes and ponds.
In fact, St. Albans Bay, going back in time with myself up here, copper sulfate, if my memory is correct, in my earlier years up here, they were putting copper sulfate into St. Albans Bay. It didn't seem to be, again, that sounds like the big issue is just the sediment, just phosphorus-rich sediment that's been there for so long, just hard to. And I know there's a lot of disappointment. There's, St. Albans, I'm going back decades, had a huge upgrade of its wastewater plant. The thinking being that St. Albans Bay would do a lot better, but I don't think it made a huge improvement.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of historical phosphorus loading and present-day phosphorus loading, which it's hard to come up with strategies to address both. But that's exactly what people are doing at many different levels of state and municipal and federal government, is addressing this from many different angles, and I think there is a positive impact being made.
Yeah. What about, we're talking about Lake Champlain, Missisquoi River. Any thoughts on you deal with the Missisquoi in different ways all the time. And what the health of the Missisquoi? Any thoughts on that?
I don't have any numbers off the top of my head. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I would say with all of these things like the rivers and the lakes, what's something that's really encouraging to see is how many people are thinking about it and how much people want to contribute to helping keep our water resources healthy. And a cool thing that we're able to be a part of as the Franklin County Conservation District is we do different programmings with landowners. So for streams, like if somebody lived along the Missisquoi River, we could do a streamwise assessment with them, where we first do a review of the property on your computer. We kind of analyze what kind of natural resources are in that area, if there's any wetlands or maybe endangered species that have been recorded in the area. Then we do a site visit with the landowners and we walk the property with them. We walk along the river. We talk about maybe erosion that we notice, how stormwater is moving across the property and maybe entering the stream. And then we also talk about invasive species that we may notice. And then we are able to provide a follow-up report that offers some solutions, some best next steps to take. And it's a really encouraging process, and folks will walk away with a little goodie bag from us that has different resources like a guide to stormwater management, rain garden resource as well. And then if they have a very a great looking riverside, we'll give them a Streamwise Award. Which is very exciting. And a big part of the Streamwise program is thinking about buffers next to streams. So that's woody plants, ideally 35 to 50 feet beside the stream.
That's right. The
Yeah.
Streamwise Award, there are also Lakewise Awards too. And in
Yeah.
fact, I mentioned I've got a half owner of a camp in the Northeast Kingdom, and my partner, fortunately, is really on top of this stuff. And thanks to him, we have a Lakewise Award.
Cool.
That's cool.
That's
is
exciting.
that a new initiative, a new thing?
Yeah, so Streamwise came out of Lakewise, which is pretty exciting. There's definitely like a partnership between the two programs. And our work is funded through the Lake Champlain Basin program. And it's a really great program that we are really excited to do every summer. Yeah.
Funding, can you talk a little bit about funding? I'm sure that's something you're working on or folks are working on every day probably, huh?
Well, I was just going to add on to what Carrie was
sure,
talking
that's right.
about. So these Streamwise and Lakewise and like site visits can also provide us with opportunities to like identify other projects and further support landowners who, maybe they have a long like length of stream that doesn't have many trees along it.
Yeah.
And like our recommendation would be to plant some trees. And there are funding sources that we can access as a district to actually fund and complete that work at no cost to the landowner.
Really?
Yeah, so that's some of our natural resources projects are identifying these voluntary projects that landowners can, decide to do. Nobody's making them do it.
Right.
And then find those resources and the funding to like make that happen without it being a very expensive project to the landowner. Because even, planting bare root trees, which are small once you
Yeah.
need to get a few thousands of them and be planting them, it can be costly.
So you can help them get funding they need, and you can't give them funding out of your budget, but you can just help them find other funding sources more.
Yeah, so for, the tree planting example, how it would typically work is
And that's a big thing with you guys, right?
we do a lot of tree planting.
Yeah.
Have you got stats for how many seedlings you're planting every year? We're talking thousands?
Yeah, we typically plant
Actually,
at.
have that
You have a
number.
stat?
Oh,
Yeah, we planted almost 30,000 trees.
I'm sorry, how many?
30,000.
30,000.
over the past 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, with our own hands.
yeah.
Wow. And different kinds of trees, or
Absolutely. Yeah, it depends on the site, and also depends on deer pressure and wolf
Yeah.
pressure, and whether it's like an agricultural field or near a wetland. But we have a list of species that we pull from, and we try for there to be some amount of diversity there, so it can replicate like a normal, naturalized forest.
I suspect no ash trees in there. Boy, kind of a sad situation with
Yeah.
ash tree. I've got a friend who just had to take down about 50 to 100 of her ash trees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a sad story, and we're actually doing some work with the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi
Really?
to develop some stewardship capacity around ash trees because they are an important economic and cultural species to the tribe.
Wow,
So it's nice to be a little bit tapped into that world right now.
interesting.
Yeah.
Do you do other things with the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi?
Yeah, so we actually have a great working relationship
That's
with them. We have funding from the Lake Champlain Basin program to do a 3-year-long project, a participatory outreach project with the tribe, which is based up in Swanton, which is basically us working with them to understand what their concerns and priorities are around animal habitat, access to nature, recreational sites, water quality. And once we have that information, we will create a community priorities plan, which they can use to inform any sort of stewardship that they'll do in the future. And then we're also offering them grant writing assistance and collaboratively applying to grants to fund projects that we come up with together. So that's been a great partnership for us, and we've built a lot of trust between our two organizations. So it's been really encouraging.
Boy, that does bring to mind an issue you folks obviously don't deal with, but I've been up here a long time dealing with Abenaki issues, and boy, the battle between the folks in Quebec, the Quebec Abenakis, just saying, hey, Vermont Abenakis aren't legit. And I mean, that it's funny. Going back a few years, I had heard nothing about that issue a while ago, but what a big issue.
Yeah, we are definitely aware of the
Sure.
controversy, and what I'll just say is that we don't believe it's our role to adjudicate at all.
Sure.
So we're
Sure, you got better things to do.
happy to be working with the tribe, and
Yeah.
we also support both tribes, both in Canada and Vermont. We just happen to be based here in Vermont, so that's the
Yeah.
folks that we're going to serve.
Boy, you touched on stormwater. I know St. Albans Town has a good couple dozen stormwater management projects. Do you deal with the town at all about stuff like that? In St. Albans City there, I know Milton has a lot, but some towns are just dealing with stormwater, and it's a very costly, important thing. But I know St. Albans Town comes to mind in particular.
Yeah, well, maybe Carrie can speak to a
Yeah.
little bit
Carrie,
about
can
our
you-
involvement with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we do work in St. Albans Town and City doing stormwater assessments. So
Yeah.
kind of similar to like the Streamwise, Lakewise programs.
Yeah.
Where we go to folks who reach out to us saying, hey, I have this stormwater issue. We're definitely more a smaller scale focus, focuses individual properties. But, we look at erosion that may be happening around their house or their driveway, and talk about different solutions they can implement, like rain gardens, infiltration trenches, water bars. And the big thing that we try to promote through that program is we want to slow down the water, we want to spread it out, and we want it to sink into the ground instead of just having it flow down and eventually into the lake. Yeah.
Interesting. So climate change gets a lot of attention. You haven't been with the district yourself all that long, but are you noticing just from your work? You noticing that things have gotten more complicated or different with, you just keep hearing more severe storms these days. I've collected weather data. I used to be in a cooperative observer. I've got tons of data. So I guess, and I'm just struck by winters in particular in my many decades up here. And again, we're coming off a very cold morning, a legitimately cold morning this morning. But in my days with the county crew in Edithsburg Falls, on my personal observation, I had either a 41 or 43 degree below temperature reading going back circa 1980.
Wow.
And for the record, the coldest temperature ever recorded in New England, which you may know, is minus 50, once in Vermont, once in rural Maine. But again, I mean, in my long ago years in Edithsburg Falls, days in the minus 20s, minus 30s were nothing. Now a morning like today gets people's attention if it's like 5 below. But anyway, I don't mean to get into that so much, but are you noticing just in your years up here that climate change is affecting some of the work you're doing, or,
Yeah, I think that some of the weather events we've seen in the past few years have just introduced a lot of uncertainty.
I mean,
with,
Vermont's taken just some of the flooding. I mean, incredible. Every couple of years, it used to be thought to be 1 in 100-year floods, and now, I mean, geez, poor folks like Montpelier, just a lot of St. John's Ferry got nailed a few years ago. Franklin County, not so much. I guess Fairfax had some issues with the Lamoille.
Yeah, not as much severe flooding in Franklin County,
Yeah.
but even with the amount of rain and having saturated soils, like that can definitely affect, a farmer's ability to get out in a field and plant or to spread manure. And then, like, another thing we've seen in the winters is just like some unseasonably warm days that really, might cut short of sugaring season if trees start to bud out, because it's like in the 40s for even just a couple days. And so I think, a lot of our work has to do with thinking about how, we can support resiliency when we don't know, exactly what's going to happen. Is it going to be a year where there's flooding, or like this past season, there was that drought?
And we have done some work to address some of these concerns, especially around flooding. We're doing a flood resiliency project in the town of Montgomery. In 2024, we got some funding to have engineers do a study of Montgomery, doing aerial surveys, bridge surveys, hydraulic modeling, basically to show which areas of the town were most at risk during low, middle, and high flood events. And the project resulted in 8 potential projects that could be implemented to help reduce flooding throughout the town. And so now in 2025, we've been working on outreach to landowners to see if they'd be interested in implementing a project like this, if they would be interested in us pursuing the project more and getting funding to develop the project more. Some of the projects are like floodplain restorations or what's the name of it? Culvert overflow installations, especially near the historic covered bridges, a way to kind of help address flooding while still preserving some important cultural resources in Montgomery as well.
Well, I can flash back, speaking of Montgomery and the Trout River.
Yeah.
I guess late 1990s, just some severe flooding. Howard Dean was governor, but you couldn't even drive into town.
Yeah, I think they also had pretty intense flooding in October of 2019.
Wow.
And there's a lot of images from that I can think of. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a key part of your work is to work with municipalities. Do you take the initiative yourself, or do you get invited sometimes, or a mix, Dorothy? Or,
I can invite people to speak
or
to
that.
a little bit.
I can speak to
sounds like you're the engagement person.
Yeah, and I'm actually working on a municipal outreach project development initiative at the district right now. So you're right, it is a mix of municipalities coming to us when we do have pre-existing relationships with them.
Yeah.
But there are several municipalities that we don't work actively with, at least right now. And part of our broader community engagement strategy is to try and make inroads with every different city, town, and village in Franklin County, because there is work that needs to happen everywhere. So what I've been doing and will do for basically the next year is reviewing a lot of planning documents and reports that have already identified projects across the county. So this is like tactical basin plans, hazard mitigation plans, things like that. And then actually setting up meetings with every municipality and talking through what some high priority projects might be, so that we can develop projects in places that we may not have, strong existing relationships in.
And it sounds like it's quite the range of projects here. It sounds like you folks cover a lot of ground.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, we have like our agricultural team, which is doing agricultural conservation practices, and that's not something that us three are super tapped into right now. But and on the natural resources side of things, we do clean water projects across different sectors. And so yes, stormwater, working with landowners, and then in natural resources, that could be like riparian buffer plantings, floodplain reconnections, stream restorations, and it's really cool for us, I think, to be able to do all of these projects, because we get to learn a lot along the way. And like how many jobs do you get to experience so many different things? So
Or do you get it just sounds like you have your hands in so many things. Do things get a bit overwhelming to you, or never? How is that?
Sometimes our plates feel pretty full,
Yeah.
and at times we do have to kind of map out like how we are going to plan our projects and like when we will have capacity to start a new project.
Yeah.
So that's definitely on our mind. We're thinking about, okay, if we are working on and like overseeing like a floodplain restoration design, when do we want to apply for funding for implementation for that project and be conducting that work? Or like when should we, how much of a like educational program do we want to commit to for like the coming year? So yeah, a lot of looking forward.
That sounds like an education. Talk about involvement with school kids in Franklin County. Is that something you try to get involved with quite a bit? And anybody, everybody?
Yeah, it's something that over the past couple years that I've been at the district, I've been involved with.
Yeah.
In 2024, we had a pretty robust program called the Franklin County Watershed 101 Initiative, and that was funded by the Lake Champlain Basin Program. And the focus of that initiative was to, introduce students throughout Franklin County, mostly 8th grade through high school, to the concept of watersheds, and for for viewers who might need a refresher, watershed is just all the land area where water, whether it's rain or snow melt, drains to a particular point, and often it's framed around like a water body, like a Lake Champlain, or a river. And so, with that land area, there's also everything we're doing on it and like how that impacts lake health and water quality, and how we conduct our like livelihoods and working landscapes. And so through this Watershed 101 initiative, we hosted classroom presentations and then also field trips. And let's see, I have the number here. In 2024, through that program, we worked with 286 students and did 16 field trips.
Wow.
And that included things like involving students with riparian buffer plantings and planting trees along streams.
So you got the kids to do some planting.
We got the kids to do some planting. And as well as some water quality testing, kind of using these field kits to introduce students to like measuring things like phosphorus or dissolved oxygen and inferring things about stream health from those numbers. And then also some like farm conservation tours and bringing students to working farms and introducing them to like soil health and how we care for the soil also impacts water quality and, the health of our streams and lakes and ponds.
Do you typically get invited? Will schools take the initiative to call you folks up and say, come in, or will you take the initiative sometimes, or?
A lot of it's been us reaching out, and that's been very warmly received. I think teachers are happy to have, some people working on their behalf to coordinate these opportunities.
Yeah. So do you see more of that? Would you like to be doing more of that if you could, or?
Yes, actually, this morning we got some final word about, initiating or starting a program for this coming year to do pretty much this Watershed 101 work again. Yeah. So more classroom field trips, more classroom presentations, and more field trips.
Yeah, I mentioned Senator Peter Welch was in the news at the St. Albans City Elementary School yesterday with his whole milk initiative. The Senate has passed, I guess. Whole milk was not getting good words for school kids for a while, that they were just saying skim milk's okay, but whole milk. And I guess, again, you would know a lot more about this than myself, but I guess it turns out there's not a huge difference. So anyway, Senator Welch from a big dairy state obviously got a bipartisan bill passed through the Senate to promote whole milk. Yes, that's okay, kids, to drink whole milk. So he was doing his thing with Anson Tebbets yesterday, the Ag Commissioner. I guess that still needs to go through the House, but it sounds like maybe a helpful thing for Vermont dairy farmers.
Yeah.
And I did on the earlier show with Lauren Weston, did talk a lot about agriculture, and she made the obvious point, but I think, and I think at dairy farms, a lot of people, under 500 in Vermont now, the numbers keep going down, but I guess Franklin County, I think she had the stat of about 90 dairy farms in Franklin County.
I think
that sound about right?
The most up-to-date number may be 88 or perhaps 87. That there are farms every month that are unfortunately consolidating. Or I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's just, it's happening. But yeah, we have a whole ag staff who are very devoted to working with farms. I think last year they worked with 91 farms across Franklin and Grand Isle counties.
Wow.
And that's a big part of the work that we do, and we're happy to be supporting them.
And she made the obvious point to, and maybe not to me, but to a lot of folks, that each farm is different. I mean, some people think, 90 dairy farms are all kind of in the same situation, same challenges, but obviously they're all very different. But so you work, so it sounds like you do some work with most dairy farmers around here.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head if it's like most dairy farmers, but we have great working relationships with many of them, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about them because you do work with some farmers.
With some, yeah. I also am not sure, of the dairy farms in Vermont, what percentage we work closely with or have worked with at all.
But I bet a number.
But it's many of them, and it's certainly throughout the county. And yeah, so some of the work that we do to support dairy farms, one piece is helping with nutrient management planning. That's a big piece of many farms is creating and annually updating their nutrient management plan to inform how to manage each field and what to do with their manure. And then there's state programs that farms may be enrolled with that require reporting. And so we assist with that as well. And that's often talking with the farmer about how they've managed their land base and gathering their records and helping with, reporting for state programs. And then another piece that we often do is helping farms apply to grants. So if they have a project that they're trying to fund, we can help, identify funding sources and assist with writing those applications.
Well, dairy industry just sounds like tough times, ongoing tough times, fluctuating milk prices. But it certainly sounds like sugar makers. Sounds like kind of a burgeoning industry. We talked off here. Vermont produces about half of the country's maple syrup. And talking to you folks, it sounds like Franklin County. I think it's safe to say Franklin County may be somewhere about 10 to 15% of U.S. maple syrup production, which is mind-blowing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's at least in the top 3 counties, maple-producing counties in the country. There may be one in Maine that's up there as well.
So sugar makers, do you get involved with some sugar makers?
Yeah, we've done some programming with maple producers back in 2024, and this year we offered some maple education events, which included some things like we reviewed funding opportunities for maple producers with guest speakers from the Agency of Agriculture. We did a forest management event with the Franklin County Forester. We discussed water quality practices with speakers from the Vermont Forest Parks and Rec. This year we did a carbon forest walk up in Richford. And we also spoke with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board about their farm and forest viability program. And so all of these events we encourage maple producers to attend, and they were all free. And it's just a way to kind of share resources, share what's out there. And we're looking forward to, we offered a survey at all of these events as well, and we got some feedback on what maple producers want to learn more about. So we know what we can provide in the coming years as well. Yeah.
Well, yeah, maple producers. It sounds like there are a lot of just more and more people getting involved with that. Have you got a good relationship? Do you deal with Agency of Agriculture much, Dorothy? Or have a good relationship, hopefully?
Oh, yeah, definitely a good.
Anson Tebbets, the ag commissioner, was with Senator Welch yesterday at the St. Albans City Elementary School, but Anson's been in that job for a while. Sounds like a very decent guy.
Yeah, the work that we do, the ways that we're interacting with the Agency of Agriculture, a lot of it has to do with like specific projects or programs that a certain farmer might be involved with. And so, again, for like a program where we are assisting a farmer with reporting and participating in a program that might be run by the Agency of Ag or by the state. An example of which is like the Pay for Performance program. And that compensates farmers for doing practices that reduce phosphorus loss from their land through a very complex system of data input and reporting. And so, that's a very involved program, and we have a lot of back and forth communication with state employees, with the Agency of Ag employees. Yeah. And then...
sorry to interrupt, but more broadly, they fund a lot of our work. You might have been about to say this through an agricultural clean water initiative partnership agreement, and with that funding, we provide a lot of technical assistance, as Dorothy was just saying, to farmers on the ground. So our role with them is helping be those boots on the ground people that are bringing these programs to success with farmers, and that's really the role that we serve.
Boy, in my early reporting years up here, I was dealing a lot with a couple of UVM extension agents I mean, they were key sources of information. UVM Extension still, and we have a couple of UVM grants here. UVM Extension still with us, I trust? Or?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah, they are. We work closely with a lot of folks from UVM Extension. In fact, the Maple Woods Walk that we had, we were connected with Dr. Ali Kosiba, who works with UVM Extension. For agriculture, we work with a lot of folks in the Extension team. And I would say just generally, Franklin County has a lot of really strong partnerships in terms of organizations. So we feel really lucky to be a part of this network of people doing really amazing things for our land and water. We have a cool group of folks called the Missisquoi Bay Partners, where we get together once a month and we talk about different projects we're working on. We kind of coordinate efforts and we share resources. And that includes organizations like the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, the Missisquoi River Basin Association, the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, and many other folks. I think there's about 10 partners involved. The Grand Isle and NRCD also joins those meetings. So it's really great that we can collaborate, we can do events together, but we can also just coordinate our efforts as in like, all right, we're doing work here, what's missing, what are some of the gaps? And that's really great.
That sounds like a very good initiative. Do you get together? Do you have joint meetings once in a while, or?
Yeah, so the meeting is usually once a month over Zoom. We try to at least once a year get together in person. I think one year we went to the St. Albans Bay. Another year we just went to somebody's backyard and went for a forest walk. So it's nice that we get to see each other in person too.
That's right. I think you mentioned the county, Charlie Hancock's the county forester.
Yeah.
I think he's from my hometown of Massachusetts, and I've never keep meaning to try to grab him for an interview. His predecessor, Nancy Patch,
Yeah.
she's a very old friend of mine.
Aw.
But that's still an important role, and I guess Charlie has Grand Isle County too. Has he got two counties?
Yeah, I believe so.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we work closely with him. He's helped us out a lot with a lot of the maple work that we're doing. We've been doing like forestry visits or maple visits, and Charlie has been kind enough to let us come along with him and kind of learn about what he's looking for when he walks through forests, like looking at forest roads and water quality and stuff like that. So we're very grateful for him being a close partner to us as well.
I hear more about St. Albans Town Forest. They've done a lot of work in the town forest, but does every community in Franklin County have its own kind of town forest, do you know?
That's a good question.
I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Enosburg, I think I've even walked in the Enosburg Town Forest once.
I think several do, but I can't say for
Several
sure.
anyway, yeah.
But Dorothy actually has a really cool project in St. Albans. I don't know if you want to talk about Hardak.
Oh, I'd love to hear about
Yeah.
love to hear about Hardak. In fact, Tim Hurlbut's a good friend of mine. We're going to have a show on Hardak. He's been involved with Hardak for years, but boy, it sounds like just a tremendous resource. Anyway, anything you want to talk about Hardak?
Yeah, so Hardak has a lot of great things going on, and a new piece, a kind of new type of town forest, I suppose, that is at Hardak is the food forest. So that's a project that started early in, I guess, 2024. A community member approached the district and said, I think that, like, an idea I have is to have a food forest at Hardak. And a food forest is basically a food-producing system that is designed to mimic a forest ecosystem in terms of diversity of species and structure. So you might have overstory trees that are larger, and maybe they produce nuts or edible, things that people are harvesting, but also they're providing wildlife habitat and shade. And then you might have some like fruit and nut producing species that are more geared towards like what we want to eat and harvest, as well as shrubs and perennials and annuals. And so after this community member brought this idea to us, we had a few community meetings in 2024 to talk about this idea, and we approached the rec department in St. Albans to scope out some locations. And the meetings were focused on like how do we want to use this space? In addition to producing food, how do we want to interact with it, and what functions do we want to see? And then after we kind of got past those goals, we started looking at specific species and design. And then last winter, the district applied to a community tree planting grant, which was offered through the Vermont Urban Community Forestry Program.
Oh.
And so that allowed us to purchase about 70 trees to plant. And we've planted about 48 of those, I think, this past spring, and have a remaining couple dozen to plant this upcoming spring.
Oh, sounds like a great project. Do you follow up on with your thousands of tree plantings? I assume you pay attention to and what's the success rate of seedlings or the trees you're planting?
Carrie does some
You got
monitoring.
a handle on that?
So-
Yeah, so we have consistently done some tree stewardship. Whenever we do tree plantings, we make sure that we follow up at least once, ideally twice,
Yeah.
for at least 3 years. The stewardship involves weed whacking around the tree to kind of reduce the competition from other plants. And we also put up some tree tubes in the past couple of years, so doing some maintenance on the tree tubes.
Do you typically do tree tubes or not?
This was new for us. So we don't typically do it because it is an added expense.
Sure.
But it's been really cool to see how successful the trees are that have been in the tree tubes. We decided to use tree tubes at sites that were really deer. The deer pressure was really heavy. So that's been cool to see. But yeah, we ideally want to see, I think it's at least 75% of the trees planted continue to thrive. And we do tree survival counts where we walk through, after we do all the weed whacking, we walk through the area and count all of the trees that we see and note whether they're alive, maybe if they're surviving, or if they're dead. So yeah, but that's often how a lot of hours are spent in the summer. We had a crew of 2 really great interns this past summer help out with the tree stewardship. Yeah.
Is 75%, is that considered a pretty good rate for?
Yeah, 75% is great. And if we find that a site has lower than 75%, we will go back and replant and continue to do maintenance till we see at least that 75%.
And again, different species here.
Yeah. And when we design our tree plantings, we look at what trees are already in the area, as well as the natural communities of the planting site. So we try to pick trees that will thrive in the site that they're planted.
Seems like I've read that about a third of Vermont's, trillions of trees, however many trees are maples. Does that sound about right? Or maybe?
Ooh.
But that's maybe something I read when. I'm not sure that's accurate. There are plenty of maples around, but.
Yeah, I don't know the statistic, but
Yeah.
I believe it. Red maples in particular
maple,
can grow in a lot of different locations. They can handle some pretty wet conditions and having wet feet, as well as like some more upland areas. And they're a common one that we, would include in our riparian buffer plantings.
Yeah. I read about chestnut trees. Are chestnut trees making a comeback, or do they?
Yeah, maybe I'll take this moment to
Sure.
plug our tree sale.
Please plug that.
Which we're selling some chestnuts at. But yeah,
Oh,
so we have been running an annual tree and trout sale for at least the last 45 years. It
Yeah.
always happens the first weekend in May. So this year it's happening on May 2nd.
May 2nd.
Yes, and it's a great opportunity to buy trees. We have many different species. We have some evergreen softwoods, that's like white cedars, balsam firs, deciduous hardwoods. You can get your maples there. And yeah, then we have some nut trees. So we have American chestnut this year from East Hill Tree Farm, I believe, in Plainfield. So yeah, I think there is work being done to cultivate chestnut trees that are slightly more resistant, and it'd be great if more folks were buying these trees and planting them. That would help the cause. But yeah, anyways, our tree sale, the ordering is opening soon, and we usually have about 400 to 500 customers a year.
Really?
We sell on average 15,000 stems a year. It's a really fun time for us to just see our community. And some changes that are coming to our tree sale this year is that traditionally our primary pickup location has been in Highgate. We
Yeah.
also have satellite pickup locations in North Hero and Montgomery. But this year our primary location will actually be right up the road at Hudak Farm in Swanton. And we're really excited to be there. You know, it's a beautiful farm
It
stand.
sounds like a great location.
Yeah.
Kudos
Yeah.
to the Hudaks who've been doing their thing for a long time.
And we're also going to have a conservation fair, which we're excited about, with free on-site soil sampling and some fun activities for kids and lots of information about trees and water quality. So encourage folks to come to that.
Have you had conservation fairs before? Is that something you've been doing for a while?
We do lots of events where we have partners who
Yeah.
can like advertise their information, but this is new for us, and we're at the tree sale at least, and we're taking inspiration from some other districts who are doing something similar. Yeah.
Well, you've got a fine staff, but you have a pretty big staff as far as conservation districts go in Vermont.
Yeah.
Are you one of the
Yeah.
bigger staffs?
I think we are up there maybe in the top 3.
Really?
And yeah, each conservation district is really, the staffing levels and the type of staff are really a reflection of the priorities on the ground.
Yeah.
So it just happens to be up here that there is a lot of funding for doing clean water projects and, you know, agricultural conservation. And also very much kudos to our district manager, Lauren Weston, who has
Yeah.
taken a lot of initiative to grow the organization. And I think she said this when she came on the show last time, that
Yeah.
when she started, she was like by herself for a period of time.
She did say that.
Yeah,
I was stunned that there were so many on
Yeah.
the staff.
Right,
And again,
so-
staff of about 9
Yeah,
with an
9.
AmeriCorps person
Yeah.
coming on.
So it's really impressive, yeah. And it's great for us, I think, also. A really fun work environment.
Wow. And Carrie, you were in AmeriCorps?
Yeah.
Talk about that. I see references to AmeriCorps people, but talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a really great program where you kind of serve at a host site. It is kind of viewed as more of a volunteer position with a base stipend.
Yeah.
And you can do a year long, you can do half a year. I think you can even do some shorter stints. And you are there to help serve an organization and fill in some gaps there. When I was at the Conservation District, I helped out with the tree sale, kind of inputting data. I helped out a lot with these assessments. It was also a really great learning opportunity for me to go to a lot of different conferences and trainings and kind of learn what it is that I like doing. And it's really exciting that the AmeriCorps program through the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board is continuing on because I think that was up in the air for a little bit. It's a really great foot in the door for a lot of graduates and even people changing their careers. So we're excited to continue supporting that program.
I don't think we've touched on USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. You have some connection with those folks too?
Yeah, I can take this one.
Sure.
Yeah, so we work with pretty closely with NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is an agency, a federal agency of USDA, and they have an office right here in St. Albans. And they provide a lot of our farmers with funding to implement conservation practices, and that's the reason why we do a lot of the work we do with farmers. And then another way that we're very involved with NRCS is through the locally led conservation delivery process, which is a really amazing program where we get to do surveys and meetings and gather input from stakeholders, which are the people living and working on the ground in Franklin County, about what their concerns are related to conservation, and then give that information to NRCS with a request for a funding pool. So we basically get to ask them, hey, can you put money towards this conservation practice? And last year we were able to build a $1.5 million funding pool specific to Franklin County farmers for conservation practices related to farmstead infrastructure improvements. So that is really great for helping farmers comply with water quality standards and regulations and just meet their bottom line because, you know, it is a hard time to be a dairy farmer right now.
Some of your funding federal funding? Is there some federal bucks that you get?
Yeah, a lot.
Has that been an issue with the government shutdown, of course?
A good portion of our funding is maybe ultimately federal, but it's passing through some other organizations or agencies. An example of which is the Lake Champlain Basin Program, which is receiving EPA funding. And so, with the recent shutdown, we weren't dramatically impacted.
Just indirectly a bit, maybe?
Right, or there might be a bit of a lag effect where the funding that we have for the work we're doing right now is maybe contracted and secured year plus ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I do think that the recent shutdown and some instability we're seeing at the federal level does go to show that conservation districts, by virtue of being on the ground, do have an important role to play in filling any of those gaps, because we are not affected by shutdowns and have pretty diverse funding streams, so we can continue to keep that work moving.
And that's the mission. You folks haven't been working with the district all that long, but is the mission of conservation districts, does that change? Is things always evolving out there?
It's pretty solid. It's I have it written down here.
Right.
Connecting people, organizations, and resources to steward our land and water resources for the future. And I think it's slightly changed in the 80-year history of our conservation district. We're actually turning 80 next year,
really?
Which I want to mention. But at its core, it's really about connecting people and resources towards this goal of conservation. And yeah, I think it's pretty unshakable. But the work that comes out of that is very diverse.
Have you any dealings with the Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge? Talk about just a great resource for Franklin County. I mean, great place. I love walking there. But any dealings with Refuge?
Yeah, they're part of our Missisquoi Bay Partners group,
Yeah.
and we've participated in their wildlife fair that they've held the past couple of Septembers. Which has just been a great way for us to connect with other partners who are tabling there, as well as our community members, get the word out about different events and offerings that we have going on. So we feel very lucky to be right nearby. Yeah.
What's the best way for folks who happen to be watching this show? The easiest, best way to contact you folks if someone has a project or just wants information?
Well, we have a website, franklincountynrcd.org.
Yeah.
And then also we're available, people want to reach out for really any reason if they have a project in mind or just a question, or an idea or concern, info@franklincountynrcd.org. And then I don't remember our office phone number.
I think I got it. It's 802-582-3133.
582-3133?
Yes. Yeah.
And do you get a lot of folks will you get calls every day? Well, people, you never know who's going to be after you or calling you or trying to get help from you, but do you get a fair amount of folks checking in with you?
Sometimes. I think what's a little bit more common is for other partners to refer somebody to us or, bring a project to us. Because, people are connecting with folks throughout Franklin County in all sorts of ways. It might be tabling at an event or just receiving an inquiry that then, maybe it's recognized that Franklin County NRCD maybe has the capacity or, ability to take this on. And so that's sometimes how projects come about, or even just, small inquiries get answered.
Would you ideally like to have a higher profile? Would you like, and you may, obviously for a lot of people, you do have a good profile. Would you like that to be a higher profile around?
I think it is growing. Yeah, it's true that conservation districts are relatively unknown to the public, but for people who do know us and work with us, I think we are a really useful organization. And we actually have a new executive director, Michelle Monroe, at the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts.
Michelle, I know well. Tremendous effort,
great.
Reporting-wise. Senator Patrick Leahy, your former Senator Leahy, just raved about her as his key person for his last year, I think.
She's really wonderful.
Michelle's great.
And she is helping to kind of raise our profile in ways and be strategic, amongst all of the districts in doing that. So I don't know, I guess keep an eye out.
And again, you can't. You're voluntary in that you can't force anybody to do anything. You're just kind of working with people who are looking to do whatever they're doing and helping them or getting them resources. But it's not like you can force or mandate anybody to do anything. Am I putting that correctly?
Yeah, no, you're correct.
Not very
You're correct.
articulately.
Yeah, we're completely non-regulatory.
So non-regulatory would be the word.
Yeah, and voluntary. We can help farmers who have received like a letter of corrective action from the state address those issues, but they don't have to work with us on that, and we'll never force anyone to do anything.
Yeah. We're down to about 4 minutes. I think you've covered a ton of ground. I'm sure there's more ground to cover. When we give each of you like a minute plus or something to talk about stuff we haven't talked about. Dorothy, anything you want to get into for another minute or so here?
Oh, I mean, I might just take a moment to plug just some of the upcoming
That's fine.
like education and community engagement projects that I'm involved with. So this coming spring and next fall, we'll be doing more education work. And so I'll be hoping to reach out to teachers and schools to coordinate some of that. But also, if somebody happens to see this and would like to get on board, would love to hear.
You're happy to hear from anybody.
Yeah,
out there.
absolutely. And then, as I mentioned, there's some more work remaining at Hardack to get trees in the ground. And so I'll be figuring out when that will take place exactly and posting an event about that. But
So maybe have an official tree planting day at some point?
yeah, we'll create some outreach for that and hope to get some community members involved. And then as that tree planting matures, maybe the district starts to take a little bit of a step back as, the rec department, St. Albans Rec, and like the UVM Extension Master Gardener program takes on a little bit more leadership of that program or of that project. I think it'll be really interesting to be harvesting food or hosting horticultural workshops, and I'll still be involved in some way.
Randy, you want to?
Yeah.
Again, I'm sure there's plenty more things you can talk
I
about.
got a couple things to say.
Yeah.
First of all, if folks want to contribute to that locally led conservation process I was just talking about, we do have a live survey on our website at franklincountynrcd.org/local. So they can go there and fill that out, and that will inform where money ends up being invested. And we have a clean water community meeting on February 25th at St. Albans Museum in St. Albans. And that will be a great opportunity for folks who want to learn about what progress is being made on a municipal and state and regional scale towards those TMDLs.
Have you had that meeting before? Is that like an annual meeting or a first time?
We have had local conservation dinners, but this one is going to be slightly more geared towards the topic of water quality. And then lastly, it's our 80th birthday next year. Like I mentioned, and it's far away, but we're having a birthday party on July 13th.
On July 13th.
So keep an eye out for more information about that.
It's funny you mentioned 80, a radio station. I'm an all radio news guy, but CJD in Montreal is still a very solid, excellent AM station. They had their 80th birthday yesterday.
Fun.
But good for you folks. So July 13th for an official 80th birthday party.
Yeah.
Carrie, you want to get into a minute to get into a few more things?
So I've talked a lot about the different assessments that we offer. Last one that I'll mention is we're doing wildlife habitat assessments this winter. Most of the other assessments we do are during the summer. But this winter we'll for folks who reach out, we'll be able to walk the property with them. We'll do some wildlife tracking in the snow and try to identify what animals are utilizing your property, and then make suggestions on improvements to your wildlife habitat and all that good stuff. So if folks are interested in that, they can feel free to reach out to us.
You touched on deer. My camp in the kingdom used to be, going back 5 years, 1 out of 3 visits out there, I'd see a moose. And nothing out the moose population sounds like it's just in really tough shape. Deer population, and maybe not the best news in a way for planting trees and stuff. Sounds like the deer population is doing well, maybe even too well.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the deer are happy. And I think there have been a lot of conversations, maybe on the state level, about how to address that. But in the meantime, we'll keep planting trees.
Okay. Hey, on that note, we'll call it a day. Thank you very much again, Carrie Brosman, Arena Brand, Dorothy Kinney-Landis. You covered a lot of ground, folks. Folks with the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District. Thanks for your time. Good luck with all your projects.
Thank you.
And thanks to my key guy out there, producer Alan Cunningham. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. Thanks a lot for joining us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.